Jeff Peterson from Heartland Farm Partners is our corn and soybean market analyst this week. The USDA is scheduled to release its December crop report Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. Before the agency's latest estimates of the year in that area, we talked with Jeff Friday morning about El Niño's possible influence on prices, the strength of the U.S. dollar, and recent price movements in corn and soybeans. We saw some lively movement in corn and soybean markets this week. What was behind it?
You know, that was some nice, lively movement, Jeff. It was nice to see corn can actually go higher. A lot of the strength really came, out of Europe. The European Central Bank didn't reduce their interest rate, their deposit rate, as much as what everybody thought, and they came back and said they're committed to continuing buying bonds out into March of 2017. That ended up sending the euro much higher and actually pulled the dollar back. We went from over 100 before that announcement to back down to about 98, and anytime you can reduce the dollar, it gets everybody more interested in buying commodities, and yesterday it was definitely strong for corn.
When you mentioned those numbers, 198 on that dollar index, explain to me what that means.
Yeah, the U.S. dollar index, that's made up of 6 world currencies. So the reason we saw a big move yesterday, Jeff, is the euro is so much higher. That makes up actually 50% of that world index. So that when the euro traded higher, it forced our dollar index down. And actually this level that we're at, we're going to have to see. It was a key reversal, so we'll have to see whether or not that's going to be setting a trend going forward.
Let's move into the RFS. Short or long term, what role do you think these finalized volumes will have?
As we take a look at it, I think longer term, I think it was a good, strong move for the biodiesel industry. As we look at corn, we're saying it didn't do anything to hurt it. It kind of puts a floor underneath it, but we really think what ends up getting produced in ethanol side is more going to be determined by the economics of running the plants than necessarily the mandate, because we're already running above the mandated level right now, and we think that will continue on into 2016.
We've talked El Nino before, but now that South America is in the middle of its growing, at the beginning of its growing season, do you have any firmer thoughts on how it might impact that down there?
Yeah, we're continuing to monitor that very close, because we do think it's going to be a strong enough item and it's a strong enough El Nino to get some market talk and market attention. In the long run, we don't think it's going to impact yields. But now we're a little farther along. It still looks like it's hanging in there. There are some forecasts of it starting to drop off. What it is going to do, though, is it's going to give them some warmer than normal temps, a little bit drier than normal in their northern and northwest regions, which we think will help support the market and give us a bounce at times.
There's reports indicating that in Argentina, when its president takes office next week, he'll scale down the soybean export tax from 35% down to 30%. And of course, there are also reports that he's going to scrap the corn and wheat quotas and tariffs. Do you think this is something that has an impact on U.S. farmers?
You know what, I think it's something we have to watch very closely. On corn and wheat, I don't, Jeff. Think it's going to have a big impact. They've only got about 1.5 million metric tons of stocks around and about 3 million metric tons of wheat stocks. Those are both less than about 1% of the world's supply. Over on the soybean side, though, they've got about 31 million metric tons. That's about 36% of the world's stocks. I think what it'll do, it won't impact the prices, but I think it's going to change a little bit, the supplying. So it could have a little impact on our basis levels here in the U.S.
As you mentioned before when we were talking, the dynamics of South America, or Argentina specifically, is that they don't export a whole lot of whole beans.
Yeah, they don't. And the interesting part about that is that because of basically the tariff or tax that they had on them? I think that's definitely impacted, because last year they only exported 10 million metric tons. That's not very many. So I think we're going to keep watching that, see if they continue putting out product or if they put out some whole beans. But overall, we don't think it'll be enough of a move to be a market maker.
As you start to look towards the 2016 planting season here in the U.S., tell me where the corn to bean ratio is right now and that you're tracking.
Yeah, that's a good question, Jeff. As we take a look at that number this morning, it's about 2.3 to 1, putting soybeans to the corn. As we run through our numbers, what that means is it probably means we're expecting about 2.7 million acres more of corn, about 400,000 more acres of soybeans. And what it looks like, we think a lot of those acres are going to come out of the prevent plant that there was last year across the eastern corn belt.
Let's talk about some selling strategies here. Now, if you need to move something before the end of the year, you guys are kind of lurking in the weeds, yes?
We are. Over on the soybean side, you got to look at it. We've had a 50-cent move in the beans. We're getting up in this area. Resistance above us is about 905. That's an area where we'd like to let go of some of these old crop beans. If you haven't done much on the new crop side, get ready also for that. Over on the corn side, though, we probably still want to hold tight a little bit. We still think there's a little bit more room there for the market to move higher. It hasn't had near the move that soybeans has had.
Longer term, where do you think realistically these two markets could go?
You know, as we sit back and look at longer term, we still think there's going to be more to come out of El Nino. So we think there still could be a little bit more of a bounce, and that's why we're only wanting to move beans that you'd have to move by the end of the year. We think as you get into the first part of the year, you'll still get a better chance to sell a higher price for both corn and soybean prices. Now, on the basis side, you're going to have to be careful. That means that basis will widen out, so getting some basis locked up in here soon is probably be a good idea.